Captain Rylan Hayes had faced many battles in his lifetime, but nothing prepared him for the moment he first stepped onto Zarenth Prime. The planet was a swirling mix of violet clouds and jagged crystal mountains, and the alien fleet surrounding it radiated power unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Rylan's ship, small and fragile compared to the massive alien vessels, descended through the turbulent atmosphere. He could feel his heart pounding as the transmission from the alien queen reached him in a strange, resonant voice that vibrated through his mind. "You are here." No one knew why, but the queen, the ruler of the Zarenth, had been searching for someone like him. He had read the reports. Humans were considered insignificant in the galaxy, barely worth acknowledging. And yet, somehow this queen, an entity so feared that entire star systems trembled at her name, was expecting him. Rylan stepped out of the shuttle, armor gleaming under the strange violet light. His eyes scanned the throne room. Towering pillars made of living crystal, walls that pulsed with energy, and at the far end, the queen herself. She was enormous, easily 3 times the height of a human, with iridescent skin that shimmered like the surface of a nebula. Her crown, a halo of light and crystal, hovered above her head. Then something happened that no one could explain. As soon as her eyes fell on him, the queen dropped to her knees. The massive chamber echoed with the sound of her fall, yet she did not speak. She just stayed there, as if the weight of some invisible truth pressed her down. The other Zarenth generals shifted uneasily, whispering among themselves. "Why does she kneel?" one asked. No human has ever been allowed near her. Rylan didn't understand either. All he knew was that he had to move carefully. One wrong step could mean war or death, and yet the sight of the queen kneeling in front of him stirred something deep inside him, a sense of responsibility he could not name. He took a slow step forward. The floor beneath him hummed as if acknowledging his presence. "I am Captain Rylan Hayes of Earth," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "I do not seek conflict. I have come because I was sent to—" He stopped. What could he possibly say to a being who commanded entire worlds? The queen lifted her gaze slightly, and though she remained on her knees, her eyes met his. There was recognition there, an understanding older than time. For a moment Rylan forgot fear, forgot the war, forgot the immense power that surrounded him. He only saw the queen and she only saw him, and then the air shifted. Energy crackled around them, and the chamber seemed to respond to some unseen force. The Zarenth generals drew their weapons, but Rylan raised a hand. "Do not touch her," he said firmly. Something told him that if anyone harmed her, the universe itself would tremble. The queen whispered something, a sound like wind over crystal. Rylan did not understand her words, yet their meaning was clear. "You are the one." No one knew why she called him that. Not the generals, not the scientists observing from afar, not even Rylan himself. But one thing was certain. The universe had changed in an instant, and in that moment, a single human stood in a chamber full of gods, and they all knew that something extraordinary had begun. Captain Rylan Hayes had faced countless battles in his life. He had stared into the eyes of enemy soldiers, commanded his crew through deadly asteroid fields, and survived ambushes that should have ended him. But nothing in all his experiences could have prepared him for Zarenth Prime. The planet hung in the darkness of space like a jewel, its violet clouds swirling violently above jagged crystal mountains. Massive alien warships circled it like predators around prey. Rylan's own ship was tiny in comparison, almost fragile. And yet here he was, descending through the violent storm that surrounded the planet. His pulse raced. This was not just another mission. It felt like destiny. A transmission echoed in his mind, resonant and melodic, yet carrying immense authority. "You are here." The voice belonged to the Zarenth Queen, the ruler of an empire that spanned hundreds of star systems. Stories about her spread terror across the galaxy. Entire fleets had surrendered without a fight when she arrived. She was a legend, a being of immense power, whose will shaped the fates of worlds. And now, she was waiting for him. The reports had all said humans were weak, insignificant, unworthy of recognition. Entire species dismissed humanity as too fragile to matter in galactic politics. Yet somehow the Queen, this almost divine being, had singled him out. Rylan felt a chill, a mix of fear and awe, but also a strange, unexplainable calm. When the shuttle landed, the atmosphere hit him immediately. The air shimmered with energy, and the ground beneath his feet hummed like it was alive. Rylan's armor reflected the violet light of the planet as he stepped out, each movement careful, deliberate. He scanned the throne room, a vast chamber of living crystal that seemed to breathe with light. Towers of glowing stone spiraled high above, pulsing in rhythm with the energy around them. And then he saw her, the Zarenth Queen. She was enormous, easily 3 times the height of a human. Her skin shimmered with the colors of the galaxy, iridescent and beautiful, yet terrifying in its perfection. Her crown hovered above her head like a halo, and her eyes glowed with an intelligence that made Rylan feel both insignificant and recognized all at once. But then something happened that no one could have predicted. The moment her gaze fell upon him, she dropped to her knees. The sound echoed through the crystal chamber, loud and hollow. Rylan froze, unsure what he had done or what was happening. The generals standing behind her tensed, whispers rippling through the room. "Why does she kneel?" one murmured. "No human has ever been allowed near her." None. Rylan did not understand either. Fear prickled at his spine, but beneath it, a strange warmth spread through his chest. Something deep inside him, an instinct he did not know he had, told him this was not a gesture of weakness. It was recognition. He stepped forward slowly. Every step made the floor hum beneath him as if acknowledging him. "I am Captain Rylan Hayes of Earth," he said, voice steady though his heart raced. "I do not seek conflict. I come because I was sent." He hesitated. What could he say to a being who commanded galaxies? Words felt meaningless, yet silence was heavier. The Queen's massive form remained kneeling, yet she lifted her gaze to meet his. Her eyes were ancient, deep, and full of something he could not name. Respect, hope, recognition. It did not matter. In that instant, he felt that he was no longer just a human. He was someone important, someone chosen for a reason beyond comprehension. Energy began to ripple through the room. The very walls seemed to pulse with life, reacting to his presence. The alien generals instinctively reached for their weapons, but Rylan raised his hand. "Do not touch her," he said firmly, feeling a confidence that surprised him. Something about this moment demanded respect, not fear. Then the Queen whispered, a sound like wind flowing over crystal peaks. Rylan could not understand her words, yet their meaning was clear. "You are the one." No one knew why. Not the generals, not the scientists observing from afar, not even Rylan himself. And yet, the universe felt as if it had shifted. Here, in a chamber full of beings that could crush him in an instant, a human stood tall. A simple man from Earth had earned recognition from a goddess, and in that moment Rylan knew one thing with certainty. Nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Rylan's heart was still racing from the shock of the Queen kneeling before him. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that a single wrong move could trigger a war that would destroy Earth before it even had a chance to defend itself. Yet a strange calm settled over him. The moment felt bigger than anything he had ever faced. The Zarenth generals exchanged uneasy glances. Their queen had never shown submission, never shown respect to any species, let alone one as small and fragile as humans. They murmured among themselves, their voices low, filled with confusion and fear. "Why him?" one whispered. "Why now?" Rylan ignored them. His eyes stayed fixed on the Queen. He could see the faint shimmer in her iridescent skin, a ripple of energy that moved like water across her body. She did not speak again, but she raised one hand slightly, signaling him to approach. As he stepped closer, he realized something. The throne room was reacting to him. almost as if it recognized him too. The crystal pillars glowed brighter, the floor hummed louder, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. It was not fear that the aliens felt, it was awe. And strangely, so did he. He stopped a few meters away from her. "Why are you kneeling?" he asked quietly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. He did not expect an answer, but it was the first question that had come to his mind. The Queen's eyes flickered with something almost human. Pain, relief, and a strange sadness. Then she whispered again, her voice melodic but full of gravity. Ryland did not understand the words, but the feeling behind them cut through the tension of the room. He felt it deep in his chest, as if a connection had been made. "You've got the key." Ryland froze. "The key to what?" His mind raced. Was she talking about war, peace, or something else? Before he could ask more, one of the generals stepped forward. "Your Majesty," the alien said, voice trembling. "This human is... He cannot be the one. He is small, fragile. Our weapons would crush him in seconds. How could he?" The Queen's hand rose and the general fell silent. The room went still. Even Ryland felt the weight of her gaze. There was no argument possible here. It was as if the Queen's presence alone rewrote the rules of the universe. Then came the first flash of understanding. Ryland remembered the legends told about the Zarenth Queen, that she could sense potential, that she could see through time itself, that she recognized beings capable of changing the course of civilizations. The thought hit him like lightning. Maybe she saw something in him that no one else did. Something humans themselves had not discovered yet. A deep sadness filled him, though he did not know why. The Queen's kneeling was not just recognition. It was relief. It was gratitude. Somehow, without understanding, Ryland felt that his life was about to change forever. The human race was about to change forever. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang through the chamber. Ryland instinctively ducked as a massive holographic screen lit up, showing enemy fleets approaching the planet. The Zarenth Empire, though powerful, was not invincible. And yet the Queen did not rise. She stayed on her knees, her focus entirely on him. Ryland understood then. Whatever this Queen had seen in him, it was not just about recognition, it was trust. She trusted a human, a being the galaxy had always underestimated, with something of immense importance. Fear tried to claw at him, but he pushed it down. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. He looked at the Queen, who still knelt, shimmering under the violet light. He made a silent vow. "I will not fail her. I will not fail humanity." For the first time, the room felt like it belonged to both of them, not just the Zarenth. The energy of the planet, the power of the Queen, and the courage of one human merged into something bigger, something unstoppable, and Ryland knew that whatever came next, whatever battle, whatever sacrifice, he was ready. Not because he was strong, not because he had weapons, but because he was human, and the universe for the first time was about to notice. Ryland felt the weight of the universe pressing down on his shoulders. The alien fleets were closing in, dark shapes against the violet sky, and the Zarenth Queen still knelt before him. Every instinct screamed at him to panic, to flee, to hide. But he did not. Somehow, deep within, he knew this was a moment humans were never meant to face, and yet here he was, chosen for a purpose beyond his understanding. The generals whispered among themselves, some glaring at him with distrust, others with curiosity. None of them could explain why their queen had knelt, why she had called him the key. And yet, in their own way, they were waiting to see what this human would do. Ryland took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Tell me what I must do," he said, his voice steady. "I will not fail." The Queen tilted her head slightly, and the crystal floor beneath them glowed brighter, sending pulses of energy through the room. It was not just light, it was a signal, a test. Ryland felt it in his bones. The first real trial was about to begin. Without warning, the chamber walls dissolved into holographic projections of battlefields, alien cities, and star systems. The generals gasped. This was the test of recognition, an ancient rite in which the Queen determined if a being was worthy of wielding her trust. Only beings with courage, intellect, and the indomitable spirit could pass. Ryland's mind raced. He had no training for this, no experience in alien mystic trials. But one thing he had, something no alien could ever truly understand, was human determination. He stepped into the first projection, a city under siege, the air thick with fire and smoke, alien ships raining destruction. Civilians ran in terror, and Ryland instinctively felt their fear. He didn't know what to do. His weapons had no effect in this projection, but he remembered something his father once told him. Strength is not always in your fists, son. Sometimes it's in your heart. Closing his eyes, Ryland focused. He imagined a shield of courage surrounding the people, guiding them, giving them hope. To his surprise, the projection responded. Fires slowed, civilians found paths to escape, and the air seemed lighter. The second projection was worse. A massive alien fleet threatened to annihilate a peaceful planet. Ryland felt the panic rise, but he clenched his fists. He began to issue commands not from rank or training, but from instinct. He inspired courage in the imaginary defenders, coordinated their efforts, and somehow, miraculously, the planet survived the attack in the projection. Finally, the third projection appeared, the Queen herself, under threat from a monstrous cosmic entity. Ryland froze. He was alone, powerless, and terrified, yet he stepped forward, placing himself between the threat and the Queen. His hands were empty. His body was fragile, and yet he felt something within him ignite, a spark of something ancient and human, defiance. Not while I stand, he whispered. He did not know where the words came from, but he meant them with every fiber of his being. The cosmic entity paused, sensing something it could not understand. The unwavering spirit of one human willing to face impossible odds. Slowly the projection faded. The chamber fell silent. The Queen rose, towering above him, her gaze soft but intense. You have passed the first test, she said, her voice carrying across the crystal hall. Her words were not loud, but every syllable reverberated inside Ryland, filling him with pride, relief, and a hint of awe. The generals stared at him in shock. Some were angry, some confused, but all were forced to acknowledge the truth. This human had done what no alien had done before. He had faced trials meant for gods and had not faltered. Ryland's chest heaved with exhaustion. Sweat ran down his face. He looked up at the Queen, her iridescent skin shimmering in the violet light, and felt a strange connection, one that went beyond words. She had seen something in him, something ancient and powerful, something uniquely human, and he had not disappointed her. For the first time, Ryland understood part of why the Queen had knelt. It was not fear, not submission, not weakness, it was recognition. She saw in him the courage of humanity itself, fragile, imperfect yet unbreakable in spirit. And in that moment, Ryland realized the truth. He was not just fighting for himself or for Earth or even for the Queen. He was fighting for humanity, and the galaxy was about to notice. Ryland had expected a test, but he had not expected the war to come so soon. As soon as the projections faded and the Queen rose, the chamber's alarms blared once again. The alien fleets outside Zarenth Prime were advancing, faster and more numerous than any reports had suggested. Entire systems were at risk. The Zarenth generals panicked, shouting orders and adjusting shields, but Ryland felt a strange calm. He had passed the first test, earned the Queen's trust, and in that trust lay something more powerful than any weapon: hope. Humans were fragile, yes, but there was a fire inside them that no alien could ever snuff out. And right now, he would show it. The Queen's eyes found his. Lead them, she said, not as a command, but as a recognition of what he could do. Ryland swallowed his fear. This was humanity's moment, and he would not let it slip away. He stepped onto the bridge of the Queen's flagship, a vessel so massive it dwarfed any human ship he had ever seen. Alien officers waited tensely, unsure if the human could make a difference. Rylan ignored their doubts. He opened the ship's tactical display, studying the enemy formations. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of capital ships, thousands of smaller fighters, all converging on Zarenth Prime. Any rational being would have called this mission impossible. But Rylan did not think like that. Humanity had survived impossible odds before, and this time would be no different. He issued his first orders, simple yet bold. Form defensive rings around the planet's energy nodes. Use the smaller ships to flank and confuse them. Target the engines first, not the weapons. Move fast, strike smart. The alien officers hesitated, but the Queen's presence radiated behind him, lending weight to his words. Slowly they obeyed. The first wave of attackers hit. Lasers tore across the void, ships exploding in firestorms. Rylan's heart raced as he watched the battlefield, but he did not panic. He saw openings, weaknesses, and he exploited them. Small human intuition combined with boldness began turning the tide. "Captain Hayes," one officer said, astonished. "How do you know these maneuvers?" Rylan smiled grimly. "I don't know, I just see what makes sense," and somehow that was enough. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was a weapon no alien had anticipated. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The Queen watched silently, her kneeling no longer necessary, but her trust in him visible in every glance. Every decision Rylan made saved thousands of lives. Every risk he took forced the alien armada to retreat from one target after another. Then came the final challenge. The enemy flagship, massive and heavily armed, broke through the defensive lines and aimed straight for the planet. The generals panicked, calling for a full retreat. Rylan shook his head. "No, not now, not ever. Humanity does not run." He led a small strike team of human pilots and elite Zarenth fighters. Using speed, coordination, and sheer daring, they weaved through enemy fire, dodging lasers and missiles. Rylan felt the thrill of battle and the weight of responsibility simultaneously. If he failed, the Queen, the planet, and countless lives would be lost. The flagship loomed ahead, massive and menacing. Rylan took a deep breath. He focused on what humans had always done when the odds were impossible: improvise, endure, fight. He spotted a small but vital weakness in the ship's engines, a single point that could cripple it if struck perfectly. He aimed, fired, and held his breath. The engines exploded in a brilliant burst of fire. The flagship lurched, its massive weapons offline, drifting helplessly into the void. The alien forces faltered. Chaos spread among them, and soon the rest of the fleet began to retreat. The bridge erupted in cheers, alien and human alike. The Queen's eyes glowed brighter than ever. She stepped forward and placed a massive hand on Rylan's shoulder. "You have done what no human, no alien could have done," she said. Her voice shook with emotion almost human in its tone. "You have shown courage. You have shown spirit. You have shown humanity." Rylan felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought of himself as special, but here in the presence of gods he realized something. Humanity was special. Fragile, imperfect, underestimated, but unbreakable in spirit. The Queen knelt once again, not out of fear but in respect. For the first time she acknowledged humans as equals, as beings capable of greatness. And Rylan knew, with a certainty he had never felt before, that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed the courage of one human, and soon it would learn the power of all of humanity. When the battle ended, silence filled the sky. The once violet clouds of Zarenth Prime shimmered faintly, their storm settling into calm spirals of light. The alien fleets that had once threatened the planet now drifted aimlessly in defeat. And in the center of it all, Captain Rylan Hayes stood aboard the Queen's flagship, looking out into the vastness of space. He could hardly believe what had just happened. A single human, commanding a fleet that wasn't even his, had led one of the greatest victories in Zarenth history. The Queen's generals, once full of doubt and arrogance, now watched him with quiet respect. Some even bowed their heads when he passed. Humanity, a race they once mocked, had earned their awe. But Rylan didn't care about glory. His thoughts were with the queen. She had remained quiet since the battle, her gaze distant, her body glowing faintly with a strange light. It was as if the victory had cost her something unseen. When Rylan approached her, the massive chamber was silent. Only the gentle hum of the crystals filled the air. "You should rest," he said softly. "You've been through enough." The queen turned to face him, her enormous form moving with slow grace. "Rest," she repeated, almost as if the word felt foreign to her. "You speak as one who cares. Few have ever spoken to me so." Rylan smiled faintly. "On Earth we care. Even for those who can destroy us, that's what makes us human." For the first time the queen smiled. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it softened her entire face. "You remind me," she said slowly, "of something my people have forgotten. Once long ago we too cared, but power makes the heart silent." Her words struck something deep in Rylan. Humanity, for all its flaws, still carried warmth, the ability to feel, to protect, to love. Maybe that was why she had recognized him. Maybe that was why she had knelt. He stepped closer, not out of boldness, but out of understanding. "You said I was the key. What did you mean?" The queen looked at him, her eyes glowing with emotion. "Long before your kind walked the stars, my ancestors were guided by a prophecy," she said. "It spoke of a time when our empire would fall into darkness, when pride and power would consume us. And then—" She paused, her voice soft. "A being from a young world would come, one with a fragile body but a boundless heart, one who would remind us what it means to feel." Rylan stared at her, speechless. "You think that's me?" The queen nodded slowly. "When I saw you, I felt it. The energy of life itself recognized you. That is why I knelt. Not to worship you, but to honor what you represent, the spark of hope." Rylan felt his chest tighten. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a soldier, one among billions. But here, in this alien hall, he realized that sometimes greatness came not from strength or rank, but from heart. He looked up at her and said quietly, "If I am the key, then I'll use it to help you. Not just your people, but all of us together." The queen's eyes shimmered as if tears formed beneath the crystal light. "Together," she repeated. It has been many lifetimes since a word like that was spoken here. A silence settled between them, heavy but warm. It was not the silence of strangers. It was the quiet understanding of two souls from different worlds who now shared the same purpose. Then, without warning, the chamber trembled. A deep vibration shook the ground and alarms flared once more. Rylan turned sharply. The enemy had not been destroyed. A fragment of their fleet had escaped, and now something worse was coming. A massive energy surge from deep space. The queen's expression turned grim. "The true enemy awakens," she said. "The one who commands them all." Rylan felt his pulse quicken, but he stood firm. "Then we'll face them together." The queen looked down at him, this small human who carried so much courage, and she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Faith. As the stars outside flared with light and the shadow of a new threat loomed across the galaxy, Rylan and the queen stood side by side. A soldier of Earth and an empress of the stars, two beings bound not by race or power, but by something far greater, trust. And in that moment, as the universe prepared for war, humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as equals. The calm that followed the victory did not last. Deep in the endless black of space, something ancient began to stir. It was not an army, not a fleet, but a presence, vast and cold, older than the stars themselves. The Zarenth called it the Devourer, a being of pure darkness that consumed light, life, and memory. It had slept for centuries, but now it had awakened. The queen stood on the high balcony of her crystal palace, her eyes fixed on the stars. She could feel it, that slow, creeping hunger moving closer with each passing hour. The light from distant suns dimmed wherever it passed. Worlds that had once been bright and full of life were now nothing but silence. Behind her, Rylan walked up slowly. His steps echoed softly on the polished crystal floor. "It's coming, isn't it?" he asked quietly. The Queen turned to him, her face calm but her eyes full of sorrow. "Yes, the Devourer is the source of the darkness that drove the enemy fleet. It does not fight for power or conquest. It only wishes to erase." Rylan clenched his fists. "Then we stop it." The Queen shook her head. "No one has ever stopped it. Not even my ancestors. Entire empires vanished before its shadow. My people believed it to be eternal." Rylan stepped closer. "Maybe they weren't ready, but we are." His voice was firm, but inside he felt the tremor of fear. He was human, just one man. Yet something inside him refused to bow to despair. The Queen studied him, her gaze softening. "You truly believe we can win?" "I don't just believe," Rylan said quietly. "I have to." The Queen turned away, but her lips curved slightly as if she wanted to believe too. "Then come," she said. "There is something you must see." She led him deep into the heart of the palace, through long corridors of shining crystal that pulsed with ancient light. Finally, they reached a massive door that opened with a whisper. Inside was a chamber unlike any Rylan had ever seen. Floating at its center was a sphere of light, pure, white, and endlessly glowing. "This," the Queen said softly, "is the heart of Zarenth. It holds the life force of my people, their history, their strength. It has kept our world alive for millions of years, but it is also the only weapon that can hurt the Devourer." Rylan looked at the sphere in awe. "Then let's use it." The Queen's expression darkened. "To use it means to end it. Once unleashed, the heart will burn out, and with it my people will fade. We will be no more." The silence that followed was heavy. Rylan could hear the faint hum of the heart, almost like a heartbeat. He realized what she was saying. To save the galaxy, she would have to sacrifice her entire race. He shook his head. "No, there has to be another way." The Queen smiled sadly. "You think like a human, always searching for another way. That is why you were chosen. But some things in this universe demand a price." Rylan stepped forward and placed his hand gently on the edge of the glowing sphere. It was warm, alive, and it pulsed faintly under his touch. "Then let me pay it," he said quietly. The Queen looked at him in shock. "You would give your life for a world that is not your own?" "For life itself," Rylan said. "For hope. For every being that still believes tomorrow can exist." For a moment neither of them spoke. The light from the heart bathed them both, human and Queen, in the same glow. It was as if the universe itself listened. Finally the Queen lowered her head. "No, Rylan, Haze of Earth, this is not your burden alone. It is ours, but you will guide the light." As she spoke, the heart's glow grew brighter, filling the chamber. Energy flowed around them, wrapping Rylan and the Queen in a blinding aura. In that moment they were connected completely, her power and his humanity blending into something neither had ever felt before. The Queen whispered, her voice trembling. "Whatever happens, remember this: even in the darkest void, humanity shines." Outside, the stars began to tremble. The shadow of the Devourer stretched across the cosmos, swallowing light, devouring hope. But on Zarenth Prime, a small human and a mighty Queen stood together, united by courage, by sacrifice, and by something far stronger than fear. The final battle was coming, and this time, the universe would remember the name of humanity. The universe trembled. The Devourer had arrived. Its shape could not be truly seen. It was not a creature but a storm of shadows, swallowing stars and breaking light itself. Every world it touched turned silent. Every sun it passed flickered and vanished. Even space seemed to scream in fear. On Zarenth Prime the sky had turned black. The Queen stood before the great balcony, her eyes glowing faintly with the power of the heart. Beside her stood Rylan, his armor scorched and cracked, his face marked with determination. The two of them looked up side by side at the endless dark wave descending upon them. "It's here," Rylan whispered. "Yes," the Queen said softly, "and this is where it ends." The heart of Zarinth floated between them now, no longer peaceful but alive with wild, burning light. It pulsed with the power of countless generations. The air around it shimmered, almost singing with energy. The queen turned to Rylan. Once we release the heart, there is no turning back. My people's essence will fade into the stars. But maybe their memory will live on through you. Rylan's chest tightened. He looked at her, truly looked, and saw not a ruler, not an alien queen, but a soul carrying the weight of 1,000 worlds. You don't have to face this alone, he said. A gentle smile curved her lips. I am not alone. Not anymore. Then the darkness came. The Devourer's voice was not sound but feeling, cold, empty, endless. You cannot stop me. All light will fade. Rylan's voice echoed across the skies. Not today. With a deep breath, he stepped forward and placed both hands on the heart. Its power burned through him, searing every nerve, every thought. But he didn't let go. The light roared upward like a volcano, piercing through the darkness. The Devourer screamed, its massive shadow writhing against the sudden blaze. The queen joined him, her hands covering his, her power flowing into his. For a moment, human and alien stood as one, their energies merging, their hearts beating together. Rylan, she cried over the roar. You must guide it. Direct the light! Rylan's body shook violently, his vision turning white. He could see flashes. Earth, the stars, the faces of people he loved. And somewhere deep inside he heard the voices of billions, human, Zarinth, and countless others, calling out for hope. He shouted, his voice breaking. For life. For every world that still believes in the light. The heart exploded. A wave of blinding brilliance surged outward, swallowing everything. The Devourer's form shattered like smoke before a gale. Its scream echoed through the void and then was gone, erased from existence. The darkness broke apart, and for the first time in millennia the stars burned brighter than ever before. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The great towers of Zarinth stood tall but cracked. The sky was calm once more. Rylan lay on the ground, weak and trembling. The air was warm again. Slowly he opened his eyes and saw the queen kneeling beside him. Her form was glowing softly, fading like mist in the sunrise. Your people, Rylan whispered. They're gone, aren't they? She smiled faintly, her voice tender. Not gone. Transformed. They live now in every star you see. They will guide the universe from the light above. Rylan's throat tightened. And you? I will stay for a moment more, she said, to thank the one who reminded me what courage truly means. She touched his cheek, her fingers warm and trembling. You are the bridge between worlds, Rylan Hayes. Never forget, humanity's heart burns brighter than any sun. Her light began to fade, her body turning into shimmering dust that drifted upward toward the heavens. Rylan reached out, but she was already gone, her glow spreading across the sky like a new constellation. He stood there for a long time, staring at the stars that now glittered stronger than before. The darkness was gone. The universe had survived. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he whispered, We'll keep the light alive. I promise. And far above, among the stars, the faint voice of the queen seemed to echo back. Soft, gentle, eternal. Then my people are at peace. The galaxy would tell the story for generations. Of how the alien queen knelt before a human, not out of fear but out of recognition. Of how one fragile being from Earth carried a light so powerful that it could stand against the end of all things. And somewhere, across the endless sea of stars, the legend began. When the alien queen saw him, she fell to her knees. Because humanity was the light the universe had forgotten.